I wanted to talk a little bit about post-secondary options for our students. So I would put them into a couple different categories. First, community college, great option for our students. Typically, we see students go to community college to complete their general education requirements before they transfer to a four-year or they want to earn an associate degree. So maybe they want to be a paralegal or an automotive tech. They could go and get an associate's degree in that field at a community college. We also have our four-year schools. So those are going to be the schools where our students would earn a bachelor's degree. Some students might go right after high school. And like I said, some might transfer from a community college. We also have trade and technical schools. I typically think of these as those, specialized industry recognized credentials that students might need or that people might need for a career that's more of a technical career. So maybe cosmetology or radiology tech, something like that. And then we also have certification programs. So those might be programs that don't necessarily earn a degree, but can help train them for whatever career they might be interested in. I wanted to present a little bit of data. So, according to this national data website, the average cost of college in the United States is $38,270 per year. In California, our average in-state four-year tuition is $27,075. So our average is lower than the national average. Um, which I know is in contradiction with the next one, but I think the total cost of a lot of schools in California is more than the national average, right? So even though our average is low, the total cost to attend the majority of our schools might be higher. We just have a lot of lower schools that skew our average lower. And then for an example, the most affordable college in California is CSU Fresno um, at 24,355 um, estimated cost in 25-26. A lot of times when you're looking at kind of college research, you're going to see them reference the cost of attendance. So this is usually calculated by taking their tuition and combining it with room and board and fees. And then that will typically give you the cost of attendance. And the room and board and other fees are typically an estimate. So the actual amount could change. The only thing that is typically the same year to year would be tuition. You can't negotiate your tuition lower. And then when you talk about financial aid, they usually take the cost of attendance and then they subtract out the expected family contribution. And then that's what they consider the family's financial need. So what's the difference between what it's going to cost and what the families can expect to contribute? That's then your financial need. I've included two links here. One of them is to a website that can help you estimate the cost of our UCs. And the other one over here can help you estimate the cost of CSUs. So I thought those were good resources. And then I wanted to give an example of some costs of attendance. So here on the left, you can see Sac State in the green. You can see the direct costs. That is the current cost this year for tuition and fees. So everyone who goes to Sac State who is from California is paying $9,000 in fees. And then you can see underneath it that they've estimated out some indirect costs. So these could be cheaper or more expensive depending on your student. So living expenses, if they live with you, they're assuming that they're going to cost about $10,000. Maybe that's paying rent, or maybe that's food, or whatever that looks like. So that could be zero if they live with you and you aren't expecting them to contribute, any money towards living with you. On campus, the costs can vary depending on what dorm they're in. And then off campus, they're estimating it at 22,000 because that means that the student is paying their own rent. Underneath, you'll see books, course materials and supplies, transportation, and then miscellaneous personal. So all of those indirect costs could be different. Maybe they're going to buy all used books. That could definitely be less than $1,188 a year. Transportation, maybe they're going to take the bus. That's probably cheaper than $2,204 per year. That might be gas, car expenses, that sort of thing. So the cost of attendance estimated for Sac State if they live on campus their freshman year is $34,608. If you look over to the right, in the blue and the gold, that is the estimated cost for UC Davis. So same thing, direct costs, those are set. So for those students, we are looking at $21,000 in fees and tuition. Estimated on-campus housing and food is $20,000. So with all of that, they're estimating 46,000 if you live on campus in a residence hall, or 37,000 if you live at home. But again, the only concrete numbers is $21,323 in tuition. So you can see there's definitely a difference in tuition fees for CSUs versus UCs. 9,000 for Sac State, 21,000 for UC Davis. Okay, let's talk about what matters, how you can pay for this. So there's a couple different ways that I would consider financial aid. So those are going to be grants, scholarships, work study, and loans. Yes, we'll send out a copy of this. And I think Heriberto might have also put a link in the chat. If not, Heriberto, can you drop a link to this presentation in the chat for them? That would be great. Thank you. So grants, scholarships, work study, and then loans. Those are all what we would kind of classify as financial aid. And then you can also use personal resources. So I'm going to talk a little bit about college savings accounts, and then we'll talk about briefly just other resources that you can use to pay for college. So financial aid is money that you and or your student apply for, and then you get it to pay for college. This could be free money, or this could be money that you're borrowing, aka a loan. The first and most important step is going to be applying for the aid using the FAFSA or the CADA. So this is typically done, or this is done when the student is in their last year of high school. So typically your senior year, if they're graduating early, it would be 11th grade. But the first step is to make sure that you're filling out the FAFSA/CADA. So this is what makes them eligible for federal grants, work study, state grants, and loans. It's totally free to apply, and it's typically where we see most of our students getting the bulk of their money to pay for college. And California also uses the FAFSA for state, and some of our state schools use it for additional aid. And our students in Twin Rivers will launch the FAFSA from californiacolleges.edu. The two applications, you use only one of them. You wouldn't do both. So the FAFSA is going to be for students who are U.S. citizens and their parents are U.S. citizens. This can also be used if the student is a U.S. citizen, but their parents are undocumented. You can still use this information, or you can still use the FAFSA form as long as the student is a citizen. If the student is a permanent resident, there are some other eligible non-citizens that can complete this one, or if the student has a T visa. Those would be times when you use the FAFSA. California also created an alternate application called the California Dream Act application. This would be for students who are undocumented. They can use this one. They would need to use this one. Students can also use this if they're undocumented, or sorry, if they're a citizen, but their parents are undocumented and their parents don't feel comfortable sharing their information with the federal government. I know with everything going on, sometimes parents might not be comfortable sharing their information and that they are undocumented with the federal government. So in that case, you would want to use the CADA. Students who complete the CADA will not be eligible for federal aid, but they'll still be eligible for state aid in California. If the student is a DACA recipient, whether it's valid or expired, you would use the CADA. Or if you have a U visa or temporary protected status. So those would be situations when you would use the FAFSA versus the CADA. Any questions on the FAFSA versus the CADA? Okay, feel free to drop your questions in the chat or unmute yourself. Okay, uh-oh. Sorry, technical difficulties. Let me see. Um, the application period, I'll make it full screen after this. The application period for financial aid started October 1st, and the priority deadline is March 2nd. So if you are not working on it yet, you should, and your student's a senior, talk to your senior, see where they're at. It's important that you're working on that right now. Okay. Um, by completing the FAFSA, students will be eligible for some grants. So grants are money from the federal or state government or from the college that does not need to pay back. So it's free money. Students who have more financial need tend to get priority for this money. And then to be eligible for it, students just need to complete the FAFSA or the CADA. My apologies. Let's see if that helps. Okay. So there are three main types of grants that you can get from completing the FAFSA. The first one is Cal Grant. These are our state grants. So Cal Grant will award up to $5,742 for a CSU. So that would be like Sac State, San Diego State, Cal Poly. Or $13,750 for a UC. So I'm sure you noticed earlier, and I mentioned it, but the CSUs are cheaper than the UCs, but you notice you also get more potential financial aid for the UCs than you would for the CSUs. And then if a student plans to apply or attend a private college, you can receive up to $9,084. This is a renewable amount for 4 years, and higher GPAs could be eligible for more options, and you do have to maintain a minimum GPA, and I believe the minimum is a 2.0. So that's really important to maintain eligibility throughout college. If you submit the FAFSA, you can also be eligible for a university grant. This varies by university, but some of them can offer similar amounts to the Cal Grant. And then, oh, there's another one. I'll talk about that after. The California Promise Grant is also a really important one. This is what allows our California high school graduates to attend community college for free. So if your student is planning to attend a community college, maybe Los Rios or Sierra, it'll be really important to complete the FAFSA. Otherwise, they will not be able to waive their tuition and fees. And then the last grant is the Pell Grant, and that is the federal version of Cal Grant. And so your students can get Pell Grant and Cal Grant money, depending on your family's income. Some other ways to help pay for college would be work study. So this is basically, it's something that's given to the students in their award, in their aid letter. And they can get a job typically on campus. And they can work up to 20 hours a week. And that money can be used because it gets paid for through the federal government. So that money can be used for college and other expenses. And then the other thing that you'll get offered is our loans. So this is money that you do need to pay back. And so when you're looking at the offer from the college, it's really important to look at the loans and see if they're subsidized or unsubsidized. Because some of the loans will not accrue interest while the student is still in school, and some of them will accrue interest. So ideally, you would take out the subsidized loans because that means that you are not owing more money. It doesn't start building and growing, earning interest until after you graduate. So, really important to interpret your aid awards, and counselors or college financial aid offices can definitely help students review their awards if they need it. Scholarships. Scholarships can be given by the college or private organizations for anything from good grades and community service to athletic ability or other unique personal qualities. I was doing some research on scholarships earlier this week to send out to students, and I found one for redheads. I found one for people who are over 6 foot. I found a bunch for like Hispanic people who identify as Latino or Hispanic. There's a ton out there. So anyone can qualify for scholarships. Basically, they'll just need to look online, submit applications, and then wait to hear back. I've listed some websites here, Going Merry, scholarships.com, collegescholarships.org, FinAid, Unigo, studentscholarships.org, and Appley. And I've also created a spreadsheet. I haven't posted it on the website yet, but I will send it in the chat so you guys can get first access to it. But on here, you can see these are all local scholarships within the kind of Sacramento or California region. Um, I've given the due date, the amount, and then how they qualify. So for this one, let's see. Here's a good example. Graduating high school seniors who have lived in El Dorado, Placer, Yolo, or Sacramento County for at least 2 years, planning to enroll in a 2 or 4 year college located within 100 miles of the Sacramento County courthouse. Right? So they'll have different things. And so I highly recommend that seniors are looking at scholarships to apply to starting now. And even if you have a student who's not a senior, uh, it's not too early. They have scholarships for juniors. They have scholarships for sophomores. It's never too early to start looking and just making a list, even if you have to wait until senior year to apply. When I was in high school, I got a couple different scholarships because I spent a lot of time applying. And one of them was $1,000 a year for 4 years. That was super helpful. And I got a bunch of other just smaller ones, but that really helped me to pay for my education. Um, and it's really a numbers game, right? So the more you apply to, the more you'll be considered for. College savings. So on top of the aid that you'll get from the government, there are also different types of savings accounts. So you could obviously just put it in a savings account or in an investment account for your student. But there are some that are specifically designated for education expenses, and some of your contributions can be tax-free. The most common type is known as a 529. You're eligible for, you just have to reach out to a bank or institution. They'll typically let you start one, or we have a state plan called Scholar Share 529. Um, It's important to note, though, that funds in a 529 have to be used for college. So if your kid isn't sure if they want to go to college, do a little research maybe on what their other plans might be and what it looks like if you've put money into a 529 that your student doesn't want to use, because you'll probably have to pay taxes on it afterwards if you want to withdraw it for non-educational expenses. Cal Kids. Cal Kids is $500 of free money that has been allocated to the majority of students. It can be used at any eligible higher education institute across the country, including community colleges, universities, vocational schools, and professional schools. And so all you have to do is check and see if your student was eligible. It's a free $500 that has gone to anyone who is considered low income, a student who is identified as an English learner, um, or foster or homeless. So what you can do, let me give you a demonstration. You can check to see if they're eligible. So on this website, you would just click not sure. All you'll need is their state student identification number. So you would just click student as long as they're in school. You just hit student, hit next, and then you'll enter their statewide student identifier, and it will tell you if they're eligible. Your student can find this number in their Aries portal. It's also on any of their official transcripts. And I believe it also might come home on like state testing reports. So you might have access to it there. But earlier in the presentation that I gave, some of the parents stayed behind and we checked eligibility, and all of their kids had a free $500 that they could claim and then use. So after you check if you're eligible, then you can claim the money. It kind of goes over how you'll need where and their participants. Yeah, all kids. You need, like, if you have 3 kids, you should check all 3 of your kids' eligibility because they might each have $500. And if you guys want to hang out after, I can look up their state ID numbers for you if they attend school in Twin Rivers. Um, and then they will be able to withdraw this money after they turn 17 and they're going to attend an eligible university. Did I hear something? Was there a question?
It was the microphone.
Okay. So yeah, so this money, free $500 if your kid's qualified and they can withdraw it after they turn 17. And then you can also link your Cal Kids account to a ScholarShare account if you wanted to contribute money for your student towards their college. So I think it's really, really important to have students check and see if they have this free $500 because that could be, books for a semester or something like that. Other resources, your student can work, whether that's in high school or during college. They could have other savings. They could receive money from parents or family. And then there are some employers who will do tuition reimbursement. So, for example, I used to work for Starbucks, so I know that Starbucks will pay, I think, a portion, if not all, of your tuition if you go to ASU and you could take classes online. And Walmart, I believe, does the same. And there are different employers who might offer some sort of tuition reimbursement. So if you don't get aid or you just need extra money, those would be things to consider. I included at the end links to each of the high school's counseling pages. Those are going to be your best resource if you have financial aid questions or any college-related questions. Um, you're also welcome to reach out to me. I would be happy to answer anything that I can. But here is their information and or their websites so that you can do a little bit of research. And then I wanted to show one other website on the Twin Rivers. If you just look up Twin Rivers scholarships, I've been working on the district scholarship page and updating that with links. And this is where eventually my spreadsheet will end up. Um, but you can see here is a file that has a bunch of scholarships due between December 31st and March. Excuse me. And then you can see here, I've linked quite a few websites that I think are really good resources for finding scholarships, especially if your student considers themselves Latino or Hispanic. There's a bunch of good websites. And then I also included some really good links if your student is undocumented. So there's three different websites that had really good scholarship options for undocumented students. And then beneath that, I included some local scholarship lists that are specifically within the Sacramento area.